Now, for more on Kenya's elections and how the results could shape the country's future, let's bring in Nii Akuetteh, Executive Director of the African Immigrant Caucus. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you back. Now, help us understand the economic importance of this election to Kenya.
Well, it is very important because Kenya itself is hugely important. In sub-Saharan Africa, it is among the 5 largest economies. Number 1 in the region is the largest economy in East Africa. And under President Kenyatta, actually, the overall economic growth has been robust, 5.7% a year. On the other hand, there is a huge youth bulge. And youth have complained that these economic gains have not trickled down to them. And overall economic unemployment is about 40%. And so in the campaign, the challenger, former Prime Minister Raila, has said that he will make sure the youth, the spoils of the economic growth are spread down. So it was fought on a lot of economic grounds. I'm not saying that the economy was the only issue, but it was a big issue.
Now, obviously, this isn't the first time that these two candidates have faced off. We saw that they faced off in 2013.
Yes.
So in terms of the progress and the promises that were made back then, as opposed to what we're seeing now, what's really changed?
That is a very good question. It looks like both sides have doubled down. In terms of the promises made the last time, President Kenyatta has said that he was going to make sure that there was youth service, which was a way to transfer skills to youth and get them employed. But that got sidetracked into a scandal where it was found out that the bureaucracy, some money was missing, millions, and so that sidetracked it. But on the other hand, a lot has remained the same because these two have been rivals for quite a while. In fact, that's an interesting tidbit. Their fathers were rivals. Mr. Odinga's father had been an ally of Mr. Kenyatta's father during the independence struggle. Then after independence, first they were ministers. They served in the same cabinet, and then they became bitter rivals. So there is a lot there.
Certainly a lot of history. Thank you for giving us that context. In terms of the importance of this election to the rest of the continent as they watch what's going on, what are your takeaways?
I think it is very interesting, because recently, I've been very partial for democracy. I think democracy is what our continent needs. And so I am for democracy spreading. If you look at it that way, in West Africa, ECOWAS, they have actually, while there have been a lot of problems and previously coups, recently West Africa has actually led the continent in terms of good democracy. And so if now Kenya, which is a kingpin on the East Coast, if it manages to do peaceful democratic elections, seems to have embraced democracy, I think that will be hugely important for the continent because you have it both on the East Coast and the West Coast.
In terms of the most pressing economic issues and also some of the bright spots, what is the next president inheriting with this economy?
I think they are inheriting a strong growth and strong investment. So in fact, this is, there was a lot of apprehension. I am included. We thought that there were signs, especially in the last 3 weeks or so, of violence. And the fear about the violence was that it would discourage investment. So if it has gone peacefully, the voting itself, now we have to wait for the results. But if the results are also accepted peacefully without violence, it will have a lot of economic results, and investors will not shy away from coming. So you see investment growing. Now, if the winner is the president, then his policies are going to continue. But if for some reason the final results show that it is the opposition, then they will make a few changes. But I don't see the investment trend changing much.
Now, given Kenya's strategic position, you have the Mombasa port considered pretty much the gateway to East Africa. You also have the Chinese-built highway between Mombasa and Nairobi. If you're an outside partner, an outside trade partner, looking at what's happening in Kenya, what would be a good outcome for them? I
think a good outcome would be is less who wins, but that it is peaceful and accepted and stable. And that everyone says, okay, we accept it. Now, we do have to throw in that, in fact, Kenya underwent an experiment the last election around we are all focusing on the presidential election, but they have elections in 47 other counties to elect governors and their constituencies. So it's spread to the grassroots. So if all of that goes peacefully and Kenya is moving stably into the future, that is what you are looking for. And in terms of Mombasa, Mombasa will probably get even more important if South Sudan gets its act together. There are plans to build an oil pipeline all the way from South Sudan to Mombasa, and that will make Mombasa and Kenya even more important.
So certainly a lot of the world watching what happens.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Always good to have you on. Nii Akuetteh, Executive Director of the African Immigrant Caucus.